Hello, welcome to the panel, and thank you for joining us. You all gave a very pathetic round of applause earlier, so for the next panel, I want a bit more energy. Or spontaneously. Yes, that's what I like. That's what I like. We've only got like 18 minutes, so a bit of time. I have with me three ladies with very sort of strong digital backgrounds, marketing and a CEO as well, so should be a very interesting mix. The title of the panel, just to remind you, is Brands in 2017, Adjusting to the Digital Revolution. Sorry. It's quite a jargonistic phrase, digital revolution, digital transformation. So I'm just going to present you with my theory as a journalist of what that means, and you can disagree or agree. But my theory is that sort of digital revolution, digital transformation, it's a confluence of different factors. Technology means the competition is changing, customer behavior is changing, and this is having real impact on these kind of service and in some cases legacy businesses. So as marketeers, the world has changed dramatically. You all have access to a lot more information and data than you had before. So what's that kind of enabled you to do now that you couldn't do before? Geraldine, you're closest to me, so I'll start with you.
Okay. I seem to be a glutton for punishment, given that I'm back here. I think you probably asked me to try again. So I think I mentioned before, but as it relates to data, I think, it is art and science. I would urge, and I urge my teams not to overly obsess about, it's all about the data, because we're all human beings and we're still people. So it's a bit of that, absolutely use it to inform you. More and more people, our customers, will expect personalization. And you cannot personalize anything unless you have the data that knows what Amélie wants or what Shona wants. So I really think getting the right data, because in my world we get too much data, and that means that you can't focus on any of it because you don't know which one is the important piece. But I think, back to the journey, get the right data and use it in a way that's useful to customers, as well as all the ROIs and all the metrics that we have around marketing campaigns. I think increasingly it's about that better, using data to deliver a better experience. Ultimately, the customers become your marketeers. Okay,
so using data to inform the customer experience, yes. Something relatively new. Claudia, I know you're sort of less of the marketing, more of the CEO, but for you, with an overarching view, what has this kind of change in consumer behavior, more data, more information, what has it allowed Altice Portugal Telecom to kind of do that it couldn't do before?
I would say that the digital transformation is definitely the fastest transformation that we have been facing. It's not only a transformation for companies, it's a social transformation. So it really is a complete, and it's incredibly fast. At Altice, we are embracing this digital transformation with a strategy that is a strategy of convergence, a global one and a digital one. And we look at three pillars, basically: the telecommunications on one side, the media and content on the other, and obviously the data and the advertising as a third pillar. So we use this incredible amount of data in everything we do across these three pillars. Not only in terms of our telecommunication efforts, more and more we are concerned about segmenting what consumers are really wanting to get. Not everybody is wanting the same things. People are getting more and more demanding. The consumer is really much more selective, and so the data allows us to tackle not only our actions when we talk about telecommunications, but obviously on the advertising piece, it's incredibly important. And we are betting on advertising. The TIDS, which is the #1 video advertising worldwide, is part of the Altice family since March. And so together with the amount of data that we have as a telecommunications base and also the creative advertising solutions, we believe that we can create very creative experiences and segmented experience for our consumers.
Okay, so a bit of an expansion into new territory for a telco into advertising. It's new. I think there's some carriers in the UK also doing it, so that's interesting. Amélie, I'll put the same question to you.
Yeah, I think on the insurance industry, it's always been a very data-rich industry. It's really based on data, in particular pricing is based on a number of information that you collect from the customer. I think what is really changing with digital is that you increase the sources of data, and in particular, you become able to gather real-time data on usage. And this has very practical consequences for several of our businesses. The first one is the motor business, because we are not going to think based on your age, your region, whether you're a good or a bad driver. We're going to actually measure this through an application that will be in your phone, in your car, and tell the insurer how fast you are driving, how prudently you are turning, etc. And if you demonstrate through these real-time practices that you're a good behavior, you can get very good tariff, very improved ones. And another one, which is very much impacted, is the health sector, because what we want to do increasingly is to reward virtuous behaviors. So if you are able to demonstrate that, for instance, you go regularly to the gym, that you eat very good things, etc., you will get some extra services and you will get some bonus on your contracts. So this is really opening new avenues to better align the interests of the customer and the insurers, and it's really something extremely disruptive.
So this is sort of more intelligent filtering of the data, kind of lets you give a better service to your customers.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Usage-based insurance, we don't think we know who you are, we actually look at who you really are and how you behave.
I think my insurance premiums are about to go up if I have
I think this intelligent filtering of data is really interesting. So you just mentioned that, you know, in the case of insurance, you use an app to kind of measure how drivers behave. So you have a sort of filtering point there. How do you, and this is a question for all of you, but how do you sort of get the signal from the noise? There's loads of information, there's loads of access points to the information coming in from mobile or wherever. So what are the kind of technologies or platforms that you use now that maybe you didn't use before, where you're spending more money, where you're having to sort of rethink how you structure kind of the data and how it's sort of informing your business? Amélie, I'll start at the back and come this way. So let's start with you.
I think the piece that is very interesting with data and the new relationship it's creating with customers is also that you can leverage very large amounts of data from your customers, then you anonymize them, and you're able to give back to society a very high level of intelligence. So we've recently launched a pilot on this called Give Data Back, and it's exactly about this. You gather all what you have as information since years, and you redistribute it to the public so that they get better protected against thefts, for instance, and that they know better the risk of accidents, dangerous roads, etc. So there is a huge potential to create a better society through a smarter management of data, anonymizing them, and bringing more value to customers.
Very utopian view of how marketers use data. Don't know if everyone in the audience would agree, but let's carry on the theme. Claudia, what about you?
Well, I would say that when the consumer has really been changing, and definitely what we have with the digital transformation, the consumer is increasingly mobile. So it's very, very important that we also change the way that we get to this consumer, where he is more often. The data of 2016 was just showing that people were spending around 2.5 hours going through their cell phones per day. And this year, 2017, it's already above 4 hours. So millennials are now above, they go through their cell phones above 157 times per day. So what this really tells us is that we do need to get where people are more and more. And this obviously makes a challenge to go cross-platform, cross-devices. So that's where we intend to be. It's where people are today. And definitely the behaviors are changing. The other part of the consumer that is changing is that the digital transformation is pushing consumers to be much more social media. So definitely also on the social media front, not only we need to be there on a push side, but we also need to collect all of the feedback that consumers are providing to us. So another big change in terms of customer behavior. And what I would say probably as a third changing behavior is that consumers are much more demanding with brands. Ad blockers, as we all know, has been growing incredibly. Today is about 20%. Amongst younger targets is already on the 30%. And this has pushed us, brands, to go to consumers to alternative ways. And so, for example, us in Altice PT, we have been getting a lot in terms of events, in terms of brand activations. And an example about linking those together is, for example, on the music side, where we are present at big festivals, then we take everything to the social network piece, not only with the news and the feeds, but also with the streaming of concerts. So we kind of double our audience, and we are where consumers are now with the different platforms.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think, to follow on the theme that I talked about earlier, we use data to drive a better experience, and that is personalization, but we need to, as brands, be careful how we do that, because people want to people are happy to give you data if you use it in the right way. And if they give you data or that you learn something about them and you don't do anything with it, so everybody gets the same TV ad or whatever, then I think that frustrates consumers. So I think it's about better experience. It is about improving marketing campaigns and being, as Claudia said, in the moment, on the mobile phone at the right time. That doesn't mean the same ad every single time I open my phone from the same brand. That is, it's evening. I don't want a latte, my wake-up morning coffee or whatever. I want wine or whatever. So it's contextual to customers in the moment at the time. And I think the third thing about data, and we have a big initiative around this, is I think the buzzword is omni-channel, and that's really around, if I'm on the website and then I go in the app and then I call the call center and then I walk into the store, I want you to know me and I want you to know what I've just done, rather than start all over again. And we've all been there, right? When you call a call center and they say, what's your name, what's your address, and what do you want? And then they say, I'll transfer you to the right department. And then they never hand you over to the department. You have to start all over again. Like that, we have to get better at that, not just within a channel, but across all channels, bricks, mortar, and digital. And that has to be facilitated by data.
Be a lovely world when I can ring up a call center and kind of everyone will know who I am every step of the way. I feel like we're getting onto an area of customer acquisition. That's obviously an area that's changed hugely, and that's been affected by kind of the internet and mobile changing consumer behavior. I'm going to throw in a dreaded word here, Geraldine, and that is Airbnb, which has obviously really upended the travel industry. Airbnb is, I think, for a very particular generation, has changed how they approach travel, how they think about booking accommodation. How do you approach customer acquisition, and how do you view that, particularly that kind of younger millennial audience, with the lens of Airbnb lurking, even if you don't necessarily view them as direct competition? I don't think anyone would deny they've had huge impact on the travel industry. So, what has that meant for Hilton?
And so I think there's disruption happening in every industry, right? There are travel share, there's the cab industry, the taxi industry globally has been disrupted. By people, I always use this expression, instead of working in a business thinking left to right, how do we improve what we have today? The disruptors think right to left. They start from where do we want to get to and how do we get there? And I think some of the disruptors have kind of gone right to left thinking rather than left to right. Airbnb, we think Airbnb, great company. They are in a different business. They're in lodging, and we're in hospitality generally, right? So you buy a hotel because you want a warm smile at the end of the day, you want your bed made, you want room service, you want whatever. Like, it's a different mentality than you want a bed for the night. So that said, great business model. And I think in terms of customer acquisition, what we try and do, as I said already, 14 brands, we try and understand who our customers are, what do they want, and how can we tell them that we have it.
And how has your manner of doing that changed? Or
so,
hasn't it?
I mean, all of us have moved a lot of our spend into digital. One, because that's where a lot of the eyes are. A lot of people, I mean, we've even got airlines now that are not putting TV sets in their cabins because people carry their own devices. So really, we've moved a lot to digital. I don't think it should be digital only, and I think some people have gone too much that way. So
in travel or generally?
Direct response. I think you do need a bit of brand awareness, a bit of what we stand for, who we are, what our purpose is, as well as you're right at the bottom. And there is, but there is also in the moment, at the right time. So there is a Google product called Hotels Near Me. And it's really interesting when you look at the data and the marketing. We are part of that Hotels Near Me product, and it spiked, Hotels Near Me traffic spiked at 10 o'clock on the 14th of February every year, Valentine's night. So I just think that's kind of, you watch the data and you see like people, it's in the moment and it's kind of fun.
I would say that the acquisition process for the customer is increasingly digital, that's for sure. But I also agree that we are still on a transition phase, and so you need to offer the different options. Some customers still prefer to have the human interaction. They go to the store. This is how they actually prefer to approach the brand, so we need to have that. Some others are basically on the phone, so all the call centers are very important. But increasingly, what we see in the younger generations is that they actually prefer this contact with the brand, and many times they actually relate to the brand, and we acquire those customers at our events. So more and more, if we do music events, once we do surfing events, sports events that we support, clearly we see younger generation, they would rather pick those moments to become customers, whereas in the past, those would be just simply entertaining moments. So we are definitely needing to move in order to meet people, not only where they are, but also where they feel more comfortable to become customers and to embrace the brand.
Amélie, are you still predominantly, is AXA still a tele brand? Is it a digital brand? Where can I sort of have contact with AXA? How are you predominantly trying to acquire customers now versus, 5-10 years ago?
For me, there are really two imperatives. The first one is to make sure that the information is perfectly available across all devices, and it's extremely clear, it's to the point, you can simulate to get that information. We know that 90% of policies are today sold after the customer looking at a website or a mobile app or a mobile web app. The second imperative is to give people the option. I think people want freedom in today's world. They want to be able to purchase digital, they want to be able to purchase sometimes face-to-face because the issue is more complex and they need to get reassured.
Absolutely.
We're very nearly out of time, so I'm going to do a very quick-fire request for tips. We've got a room full of, I think, marketers, startup marketers who all want your wisdom. So if you were to give them a tip of, how to approach anything from keeping the customer, acquiring the customer, what would be your sort of tip in this very complex world of, navigating Google advertising, Facebook, how much you should spend on television? What would be your one overriding tip? Geraldine, I'll start with you.
Oh God, you never told me this was coming. I guess two things. Focus on the customer, not on the technology, not on the marketing, not on the ROI. Customer first, and treat your team well. And I think if you do those two things, if you're true to those two North Stars, I think you'll be successful because ultimately your customers will climb over themselves to buy your product.
Claudia, very quickly.
I would say to just make sure that you know your customer, that you are where the customer is, that you anticipate some of the reactions, and that you strive to really surprise and to make a wow effect. This is what I would recommend.
For me, I would say it's really about being obsessed with solving customer problems. Our industry is full of flows, complexities, jargons, etc. We need to make sure that every initiative we take really addresses a problem. Because once you simplify customers' life, you don't have any issue in adoption. Customer, go for it. So really simplify the life, solve the problems.
I'm going to wrap it up on these pearls of wisdom. Thank you so much for joining me on this panel. Hopefully you guys found it interesting.
Thank you.
More enthusiastic about it. That's what I want. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.